Child of Alara, a solid 5-color commander by itself. It destroys planeswalkers, and it destroys all non-land permanents whenever it dies. So it allows you to play a nice control deck and always have the threat of a extremely versatile and far-reaching board wipe at a moment's notice. So for this one, I've chosen to build it around one of my favorite engines and I guess favorite cards of all time, which is Astral Slide. So this deck has always struggled as far as control decks go to really get its engine going, keep it going, and still maintain a threatening board presence in multiplayer. In single player, it has a much better chance. It does fold, of course, to infinite combos. So if you're having an interactive game with your opponent, this is a great deck. But if you're just goldfishing with people, this is not a good deck to play. So I built this particularly to be played in the more interactive, fun-oriented metas, not against the more competitive players. So recently, of course, there was printed a new card, Astral Drift, which is very similar to Astral Slide, with the added ability of cycling on the Astral Drift. So it's very cool. I don't really know why there's a car on it. That seems kind of out of place. Maybe even anachronistic considering the context of this game. I never noticed that car before. That's very odd. I really don't like that at all. I mean, at best, it's an extremely literal and not very rewarding interpretation of the word drift. Yeah, I don't like that. Anyway, the mechanic is awesome. And having 2 in a deck, especially since I'm not running copy enchantments because I'm selling them, it means, twice the fun. Within the Astral Slide, kind of engine, you have the support cards. I'm not sure how good this is yet, New Perspectives. It does draw you 3 cards when it enters, which is cool. And of course, it allows you to potentially pay 0 for cycling your cards. It requires a little bit of hand maintenance and discipline to get there, but when you do get there, it's pretty solid. So next we've got Fluctuator. This one straight reduces the cost of cycling. I think that's a pretty decent card for the deck. It is an artifact, so it's a little bit trickier to tutor up, unfortunately, but still a solid card all around. We got Zur the Enchanter. He will fetch up Astral Slide. He also will fetch Pernicious Deed in this deck and Animate Dead. So I made sure to keep a few enchantments in here for him to go get to, really try and maximize the value. I didn't want to go too deep in a Zur package. Wow, phrasing. And in this case, I didn't get Ghostly Prison or Propaganda. So, he's good, but he absolutely can be abused. And I probably could add a few cards in this deck, even just Necropotent's Personal Sanctuary. Here's another enchantment that he can fetch, Spirit Cairn. So this one's pretty cool. Basically, whenever a player discards a card from their hand, in this case, whenever you cycle, you can pay 1 white. If you do, put a 1/1 spirit token with flying into play. So it allows you to kind of fog people for a little while and build up a nice little flying army that you won't kill anybody with. So it's a pretty cool card. Ruthless Sniper, haven't ever tried it. I saw it, thought it was pretty cool, figured I'd throw it into the deck. I think over time it would add up, and I think it has some potential. I also did pick up, and he may end up just replacing it. It is called Archfiend of Ifnir. It's a 5-mana demon, from, I guess, Amonkhet. I don't remember the new sets. And it's got cycling, and whenever you cycle or discard a card, you get to put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponent controls. Yeah, each creature. So it's, you know, it's 5 mana instead of 1. So I think it may be good to have both in the deck. I did order him, and I think I'll throw him in here when he comes. Rift Sweeper is a fun card to have in an Astral Slide deck. You can stack your triggers such that it will shuffle something your opponent's shuffle one of your opponent's creatures from exile back into their library. So it's a nice way to deal with some resilient and pesky threats that they have. So next we're going to go through these cyclers. This is an extremely flexible list. I've got a pile of other cyclers that may end up going in here. I think it's going to be a lot of test playing and then weeding out the underperformers, testing new stuff, and weeding out underperformers yet again. So to start out, we have Violent Impact. I like this card in here simply because destroying an artifact or land in EDH is generally actually pretty useful, especially when it's destroying a land, because you can hit like a Gaia's Cradle, you could hit like a Mazavith. Excuse me. With the artifact, of course, if somebody manages to throw a power artifact on, or, you know, they get out like a Mycosynth Lattice or something, just stuff you kind of want to deal with, you know, it allows you to do that. So I think it's fine to have that. I did double up on the destroy target land because of how many lands I see abused locally. So, you know, that's both those slots are very flexible and very meta dependent. Wander in Death. So I think it's pretty good. It'll allow me to bring back 2 creatures from my graveyard to my hand. I could get back 2 cyclers. It's got cycling. It's 3 mana. So it's costed pretty aggressively. Forsake the Worldly, same deal. Exile artifact or enchantment. It's reasonably costed. Plus it has cycling. You know, exile is strictly better than destroy for an artifact or enchantment. You know, with the corner case, of course, being if they're targeting yours for exile and you wanted to destroy it to save it and then bring it back with an Eternal Witness, yes, technically this card would be less, you know, versatile or less strong. So, you know, for the one person who had to point that out, there you go. Haze of Pollen, it's basically lull, but it costs 1 more to cycle. That being said, I don't think it's bad to have 2 fog effects with cycling in the deck because, you know, it helps you not die. So we got both lull and Haze of Pollen in the deck. I threw a couple beefy boys in here. I don't know yet if it's really going to be worth having them, but I was looking at the deck and I was like, well, I don't have a win condition. So hopefully Greater Sandworm Beats over the course of, I guess in this case, 6 turns is going to be the win condition. You know, he's got a little bit of evasion on him, so that was cool. You know, you can cycle him away. He's a 7 mana 7/7, which isn't spectacular, but you know, the cycling will be relevant, as you'll see later, on, you know, some of the big creatures. Ominous Sphinx, I think, is fairly necessary for a, you know, a control-ish type deck. You know, unfortunately, it's not opponents, like not creatures your opponent controls, or even creatures your opponents control. It's just target creature and opponent controls. So, you know, you're going to be fogging stuff. You're probably just going to be fogging like value swings to try and get like draw triggers, or, you know, you're going to be fogging like ninjas and stuff. Is it the best card? No. At 5 mana, I don't think it's going to stay in the deck, but, you know, I got to give it a fair shot and see how it plays. Razaketh's Right, you know, it's a tutor, and it cycles. I mean, a 5 mana tutor, it's 1 more mana than Diabolic Tutor, right? And it cycles. So is it fairly costed? It's pretty fairly costed. I mean, obviously Demonic and Vampiric are strictly better, but it's not a terrible card. And, you know, you can cycle it for 1 mana, so it's really not that bad. I did put in the land cycling package from Alara Reborn. I think they are really good cards. You know, I'm not going to call them budget fetch lands, but, you know, you do need to keep in mind they cycle for, you know, land types, not for basic lands. So these are extremely, extremely important for maintaining a 5-color mana base. These are awesome cards in a 5-color deck. And, you know, you got a 6/3, a 4/5, a 5/1, you know, on these bodies. So they're not horrible things to be putting into your bin, because later on I'll show we run Twilight's Call and Living End. So Tectonic Reformation, this is also a card that I looks good on paper. I don't know how good it's going to actually be, so we're going to find out. I am considering putting Lightning Rift in the deck. It's you can pay 1 mana whenever you cycle a card to deal 2 damage to a creature. I believe it's creature or player, maybe. I think it's only a creature. Anyway, I just don't think that 2 damage is enough in EDH to justify putting the card in. We'll see. We'll definitely see. So we got Grave Upheaval. It's one of the 2-color, you know, basic land cycling cards. So it's not as good as those 5 beasts. Well, they're not all beasts, but you know, the 5 creatures. But it does reanimate plus basic land cycling. So it's got some, you know, it fills 2 roles in the deck, right? Same with this one. It can fog you for a turn, fills 2 roles in the deck. So I really don't see a reason not to run it. Treacherous Terrain. This one's probably the worst one. And not only do I think it's the worst one, but sorry, it's not the worst one. It's not the worst of that cycle, but I think, oh god, I think in this deck, it you know, we're gonna have to see. I think 8 mana is gonna be tough to get the effect it has on it. And you know, killing people with this card, you know what? Let's go back. Sorry, I remember now why I put it in the deck. You can actually cycle this card, you know, for the lands, obviously, but then you can also recur this thing with an Eternal Witness. In late game, you can probably kill a couple players recurring this with an Ewit. It's very, very late game play to do it. So is this going to win you a lot of games? Doubtful. I like the blue-black one, but I couldn't find it in my pile, in my many boxes of cards. So even though they are sorted, I have probably 30,000 cards that are sitting unsorted right now, and that's kind of a pain to look through for 1 card. Crows and Tusker, you know, OG cycler, search for a basic land. It's like okay. Honestly, the other ones, in my opinion, are better, but we're gonna keep them. Eternal Dragon, classic card. Honestly, it's not the best, but it's foil, so it's in the deck. We've got Chroma's Vengeance in a not so nice foil, but it's still gonna go in the deck because it does, you know, wipe the board. It does hit Astral Slide, so you got to make sure you float an Ewit before you cast this. Otherwise, you're gonna like hate like yourself and probably the people around you, and just take your anger out on them in a really petty way. So Decree of Pain, card's great. I mean, this card is absolutely great. You look at it, you say 8 mana, oh my god, you're never gonna cast this card, whatever. Nah, this card's insane. And when you do cast it, the advantages you get off that card draw are just so tasty. You can't turn that down. Next, we're gonna, I guess, kind of just follow the trend of board wipes. We got the Pernicious Deed, classic card, awesome card. It is the Bane of Tokens, and it is searchable off of Zur, as I said before. So that's cool. You know, it's an enchantment, so it can be stifled, stuff like that. But yeah, we got Merciless Eviction. And actually, can you stifle Pernicious Deed? You sacrifice it. Yeah, I don't know why I'm questioning whether or not you can stifle it. You can stifle it. That was stupid. Ignore me. It's late. Merciless Eviction, awesome card. I know it costs 6 mana, but being able to exile all artifacts is really, really good in EDH. Like that's super important. And the salty tears you will get from the artifact players when you resolve one of those, if you manage to, they're absolutely beautiful. I would bottle those and save those for a rainy day, or save those for a hot, dry day, actually. Wrath of God. Yeah, man, you got to play this card. You can, you know, you got some cyclers. You can start blinking Eternal Witness, bring back Wrath of God, start doing that whole thing. Pretty cool. You know, Day of Judgment, or Department of Justice, as I call it. Awesome card. You should run it. It does not prevent creatures from regenerating, so just keep that in mind. Next, we've got the targets for Astral Slide in the deck. Unfortunately, there are not as many as would be good. So I'm probably going to add a couple more. In fact, at the end, I will explain one that I really did want to add. Of course, we've got Eternal Witness. I have this playmat from GP Richmond. It's awesome looking. Yeah, so anyway, she's cool. Really important card to have in this deck. If you, like, literally, if you make an Astral Slide deck without Eternal Witness in, I don't know what you're doing. And you should not make that deck. You know, I was thinking about making an Esper colored one with Zur as the commander. And there are many strong arguments for doing that. You can blink like Mnemonic Wall, Archaeomancer. All those guys are to recur instants and sorceries. You can run Necropotent Solitary Confinement combo. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can make it really stacksy. Those are all fantastic arguments. It is a really good deck. But honestly, I just love being able to bring back cards with Eternal Witness off of a cycled card. I think it's pretty awesome. Runescar Demon, it's a tutor that you can recur. It costs 7 mana to bring in. So no, I don't think you're going to get to play this much. I'm not sure if this card is going to stay in the deck because I don't think that it's appropriately costed for this deck. Tilling Treefolk, one of the best cards in the deck. It allows you to get up to 2 target lands from your graveyard to your hand on an ETB. So you literally can go back, get a cycler, which you can use to recur him, and then get another one to cycle something else. So this card is incredible in this deck, and without question a staple in any Astral Slide deck. And even just like Rune can make pretty good work of them. Next we got Peacekeeper. This is an awesome card because you can blink it with the Astral Slide. I say blink, but actually you're kind of exiling it to the end of the turn rather than blink, so I shouldn't say that. Anyway, you can remove it from the game until the beginning of the next end step. So you can actually float it past your turn, or you can just keep it out there and then keep not having to pay the upkeep cost. When your upkeep comes around, and prevent creatures from attacking. Cards also on the reserve list, and it's like less than $10, I think. You can use it in so many decks. You can do Carador, you can do Rune, both of which I have, of course. So I have this card in a lot of decks. It's a really, really good card. And I mean, if you can't afford Moat, this isn't a terrible option. So next we have kind of the jank. We've got Quicksilver Dragon. This is really just here because you would morph it and then flash it out and bring it back in as Quicksilver Dragon. It's kind of a cheesy strategy. It's not amazing, but it's fun. So I do it because I think it's fun. No, it's not the best thing in the world. It's really not. For the same reason, I've got Sagu Mauler. I just think that, playing him for 3 and then flashing him in and getting a Trample Hexproof 6/6, I just think it's funny. Is it great? No, it's not great. But we got to kill people somehow, and that's looking like the way we're going to do it. So we've got Sagu Mauler. Next we have Bone Shredder, and I went with Bone Shredder because I can recur it as part of the Reveillark Karmic Guide combo, which I did throw into the deck because it's really easy to shoe into a deck, and the Reveillark and the Karmic Guide both independently provide you a significant amount of value with Astral Slide, so there's no reason not to run them in the deck plus Astral Slide. So yeah, Bone Shredder's in there to kill things. And then we do have Acidic Slime as kind of a grindy way to kill your opponents, if you're, going to do it. Or, of course, you can just destroy everybody's lands, artifacts, and enchantments off the Reveillark Karmic Guide combo. So, he's pretty good. And since I was talking about Reveillark Karmic Guide, we're going to show them next. We got the Viscera Seer, we got Karmic Guide, and, of course, we've got Reveillark. You could use Ashnod's Altar, Martyr's Cause, any sack outlet, actually, really. I prefer to use sack outlets that are that you can get with the Reveillark if they die. So I like Viscera Seer, and the fact that you can stack your entire library in whatever order you want with this combo That's pretty cool. So yeah, run the combo in the deck. It's only 3 cards and it can win you games. So that's like a pretty compelling argument for doing it. And I'd love to see the counter argument for having it in the deck, because I don't think it's going to be very strong. Unless you want to argue that everything in the deck has to be a cycler. I don't think so. So we got Buried Alive. This one's pretty cool because A, you can go fetch up Reviar, Karmic Eye, Viscera Seer, and then reanimate everything with Twilight's Color, Living Death. And B, because it gets you 3 creatures into your graveyard, which is just generally nice. It's an amazing card, amazing tutor. If you can bring stuff back from graveyards, then you should put that in your deck. My tutor package in this deck is actually very light. I was thinking about increasing it, but for now I don't think I'm going to. I do want to be able to consistently get Astral Slide out, so I may have to throw a couple more in. Court of Calling, it searches for creatures. It's good. It's not like as powerful in this deck because it's not really a creature-based deck. So we have Eladamri's Call in here as well, since it's not really a creature-based deck. And then, of course, since it's, again, not a creature-based deck, we also have Congregation at Dawn to go get all those non-Astral Slide creatures. We run Demonic Tutor, and we run Vampiric Tutor. My Idyllic Tutor is sitting in another deck, and I truly just cannot bring myself to buy it, since it's only expensive as a single printing tutor. So for now, I don't think I'm going to get it. I am going to put in Plea for Guidance. It's the one from, I think, Born of the Gods that searches for 2 enchantments, because I can get Astral Drift and Astral Slide. I just have to go get it out of the box and then put it in the deck. So that's really just me being, I don't even want to say lazy, because that would sound bad, and I don't view myself as lazy. But that's pretty much what I'm being right there. So yeah, Creeping Renaissance. This allows you to go get lands back from your graveyard, which is cool because most of your lands have cycling. I will go through the cycling land list as well, just because. So we do run Creeping Renaissance. As I mentioned before, we run Animate Dead, because you can fetch it off of Zur. And it's just generally a decent card. It's very, I don't want to say very weak in this deck, but it's not an amazing card in this deck, because if you do Astral Slide, it goes to the grave. It's not horrible going to the grave, because let's say you bring it back with like Eternal Witness, and then like blink the creature that it reanimated, blink Eternal Witness, bring back Animate Dead, put Animate Dead on another creature in the graveyard, blink that creature, blink Eternal Witness, bring back Animate Dead. Like, you can slowly reanimate your entire graveyard using Animate Dead without having to keep casting those creatures and sending them back to your hand. So it's not bad, but you just have to remember that Eternal Witness will make it fall off. I run Genesis in the deck. Not 100% sure if I'm going to keep it in the deck. He's just going to have to get test played, and we're just going to have to see from there. Fun fact, this card's like under $1 right now, I think, or at least the last time that I saw it. I picked up 8 copies of the new printing at under $1. I think it's a solid pickup. It, at least, in the good old days of EDH, when EDH was, EDH, this was a staple in green decks. Now, since everything's combo and turn 4, this card has no place. It has no business existing in those decks. So if that's what you're up against, you can definitely pass over him. I at least like to play him in my decks. So 2 very good cards. Living Death and Twilight's Call. So I do need to up the amount of cycling creatures if I really want to maximize the value of this. I also need to throw like an Anger or something in this deck. But basically what it's going to do is take all the creatures that you cycled, and it's going to put them into play, while also killing everything on the board. So this card is really good, and if I built the deck a little bit differently to really optimize these cards, they could be game winning and just like haymakers. So I may end up doing that still. I just need to kind of test play the deck a little bit, and then understand which direction I really like the deck to go, and kind of understand how the deck is playing and what I think it could actually fit in it. We do have some ramp in the deck, so I'm going to go ahead with Chromatic Lantern. Of course, it's a 5-color deck, so you really should run it. Next we have, I don't actually know this card, I have to read it. Shafet Monitor, I don't know. It's got cycling for 4. Oh, but it lets you search for a basic land card or a desert, put it onto the battlefield when you cycle it. It's also a 6/5, so that adds to that body count for the Living Death. So I think in this deck, at least, this is an awesome card. In this specific type of deck, awesome card. We have Beneath the Sands, which is search for a basic land card, put onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Which reminds me, I need to put a couple basic lands in the deck. There are currently none. I'm bad at Magic, so there you go. It also cycles. Sylvan Scrying, this is cool because it searches for a land card. In this deck, it will allow you to search for some cycling lands, which is always relevant. But I also run Phyrexian Tower in the deck just to have a safe sack outlet to prevent things from, getting exiled permanently pre-Astral Slide, or if you didn't have the mana up for it. So I think, I think I like having it in the deck. But I think Sylvan Scrying does not do enough in this deck to really necessarily keep it in. So we'll see. Next, we have a card that I think is like $10 now, at least, which, you should have seen it coming. This card's amazing. You search for your library for 4 land cards with different names and reveal them, and opponent puts 2 into your hand. Sorry, 2 into the graveyard, and then the rest go into your hand. So yeah, this is a really cool card. It allows me to go search for 4 different cycling lands if I really need cyclers. That's pretty much what I'm going to be using it for. I wouldn't say it's true ramp. I don't even know why I have Seaborn Muse in here as ramp. But Seaborn Muse is extremely important in an Astral Slide deck because it allows you to keep mana up every single turn to just keep cycling stuff. I mean, this card is so important in the deck. I really recommend it. It'll help keep you alive a lot. Nature's Lure, it lets you get a forest card and put it into play, so that's extremely relevant in a deck with dual lands and like Murmuring Bosk and stuff. I would say this is an auto-include in the land ramp package. I'm running Farseek. I'm not running Cultivate, and I'm not running Kodama's Reach because I don't have many basics. Well, I currently don't have any basics, but after I put basics in, I still will not have a lot of basics in the deck. So I think Farseek is just going to be strictly better, and of course it allows you to get a named land type, which is important in a 5-color deck. Next we run Birds of Paradise, which I think it's fine in the deck. I do have a pretty solid green core to the deck, so I think I'll be able to get this bird out without too much trouble. I'm just thinking to myself now whether or not I really want to have it in the deck. Darksteel Ingot, I know it's 3 mana. It does add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and it's indestructible. And really, the indestructible on this is actually so much better than I think people really give it credit for. I don't know. You gotta play it and see for yourself, really. But in my experience, the indestructible clause on this thing has just been like a lifesaver. So I would recommend running it. It's in a 5-color deck. I think you really can run a Darksteel Ingot without feeling like you wasted a card slot. I've got Skyshroud Claim. Again, it gets up to 2 forest cards and puts them into play. So, in a 5-color deck, again, it's a really good card. The fact that it gets forest cards specifically, not basic forest or basic lands, you really got to pay attention to that stuff, and it really matters. So for my cycling package, I'm running Blasted Landscape, Slippery Karst, Smoldering Crater, Polluted Mire, Remote Isle, Drifting Meadow. And yes, I made sure to get as many different sets of these cards as possible to make it look as jarring as possible. You're welcome. I opted for the Urza's Saga cycle of these lands because they cost 2 color cycling, which is reduced by Fluctuator. So I think that these are going to be slightly better in this deck with Fluctuator in it, compared to like Secluded Steppe, Lonely Sandbar, Forgotten Cave, Barren Moor, what was the other one? Tranquil Thicket. Yeah, I do run Tranquil Thicket. Okay, but it's better than those in this deck because of Fluctuator. Otherwise, I'd say those are probably a little bit better because, again, here's Tranquil Thicket. It's the only one from the single mana cycle that I run. And then, of course, I run the 4 dual ones. I'm assuming there's a 5th that I just don't have, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's probably blue-black. Yeah, I just don't have it. But I think these are also worth running. Note the Swamp Mountain, so the land type, the dual land typing, very important, and very fetchable. I am running fetch lands and dual lands, a couple shocks, The shocks, honestly, I'm probably going to wind up taking the shocks out and putting in the basic lands, since I only have a couple shocks and then the full suite of duels. So yeah, so that's the deck in a nutshell. It's got a couple different identities. So we're gonna have to kind of see how it plays out. I think if I really want to go deeper on the living end or the living death and Twilight's Call route, then a lot of the cycling cards I had in this pile are going to have to turn into just big creatures, which there are plenty of, by the way. There are some awesome creatures that you can cycle. So I really wouldn't necessarily discount that as a strategy for this deck. But for now, I want to try and give it the more control-y shell with lull and haze of pollen and the land destruction one. So for now, I wanted to give those a shot. Got a little bit of time left, I think, before this gets too painful. So let me go through the the guys who didn't make the cut, the runner-ups, and I'll kind of explain my reasoning behind each one. So first, 1,000 Winds. It's a cool morph card, and it does actually return all tapped creatures to their owner's hand. All other ones when you morph it. So this is a very borderline card. I think it could go in the deck. I just cannot find a slot for it because I actually have to make a couple cuts when my Archfiend of Ifnir comes and one or two other cards. So the deck itself is already going to have a few cuts, and I did not have a place for this. Next, I couldn't resist the temptation of considering Krosan Cloudscraper. You put him in as a morph, and then you blink him, and boom, you have a 13/13. His lack of trample or any other evasion is what made me take him out of the deck. I love him as a flavor card, but I just don't think he has the... I don't think he's worth it. Oracle of Dust is a really cool card in this deck because you can pay 2 and put a card an opponent controls or owns from exile into that player's graveyard. So you can literally just start yanking creatures that you blinked with Astral Slide into their graveyard. And then you get to draw a card and discard a card after. So it'll trigger your discard triggers as well. I think it's a solid card all around. My only concern is that putting cards into an opponent's graveyard is not as good as permanently exiling it or shuffling it into their library, in my opinion. I still may put it in because I think having 2 things that can disrupt cards that were exiled with Astral Slide is better than 1. So he's definitely like a solid maybe board. Clear, I think, is just too narrow. There's not enough enchantments that I find myself saying, oh, that needs to be destroyed or I'm going to lose the game. So Clear didn't make the cut. Scrap didn't make the cut simply because there was the one that destroyed an artifact or land. So I didn't think that Scrap was going to be worth having in here. I'm going to keep it in mind. Maybe, meta dependent, but for now, definitely not. Repopulate it's good. But I just don't think there's going to be enough cases where you're going to really want to use it. So for now, it's not going to be in the deck. Next, we have SWAT, destroy target creature with power 2 or less. It's just too narrow. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's worth it. There is another one. I want to say it's called Expunge. I don't remember if it's called Expunge. Anyway, I believe it's destroy target non-black creature for 3 mana. I couldn't remember what set it was from, and I didn't feel like looking it up or looking for it in my box. So it's probably good, and it may be worth running. Let me look it up right now really quickly while you read Rescind, because I know everybody's a really slow reader and needs some time to read that card. Also, just admire the artwork on it. I mean, look at that thing. You got like a book with the text evaporating out of it, which is kind of, if you look at the card being called Rescind, you can see it's a very literal, they're kind of beating you over the head with that imagery, right? So that one's pretty straightforward. It's kind of like 1984, but, on a Magic card, and, you can cycle it. Returning the permanent to its owner's hand, of course, is pretty cool. The fact that it hits a permanent specifically means you can rescue Astral Slide, which is one of the arguments you can make for having it in the deck. Regardless, it didn't make the cut because it's double blue. And unfortunately, I just don't think that the double blue is something I'm going to be able to swing in this deck consistently, since the core of the deck is really like white, green, black. You know, it's kind of a junk core. I'm not finding this removal spell that I thought I was going to find. So that was kind of a useless tangent. If I think of it, I'll mention it. There is also Death Pulse, which is from Onslaught. And it gives a creature -4/-4, but it costs 4 mana and cycles for 3. So I don't love it. This, let me not, I shouldn't single him out. So this entire cycle, and of course Elvish Aberration, which I had a box of cards, got literally all my commons and uncommons from Onslaught, Legion, Scourge, the whole box, all like 5,000 of them got water damage from a broken pipe a few years back. So that was pretty tragic, and unfortunately not everything, a few cards made it out, but I'd say 90% of them are destroyed. So yeah, so that whole cycle, I did not put them in simply because the ones from Shards of Alara are strictly better. So, you know, there's no reason to put these in, except, of course, if I'm going to go heavier on the Living Death Twilight's Call route. If I'm going to do that, then I'm going to throw these guys back in there, I think. But even still, like, the creatures from Amonkhet are just more, like, beefy. So I think they're a little bit better. Akroma's Blessing, this one, it probably is going to actually end up going into the deck. I cut it early on when I wasn't sure if I was going more control or more creature based. So I think it has a place in the deck. You know, being able to give your creatures protection from a color is good. So this one's in the maybe board, but I think it really should be main board once I figure out a spot for it. Dirge of Dread I like because it makes all your creatures gain fear until end of turn. So again, if you're going that Living Death Twilight's Call reanimation, mass reanimation route, then this card has to go in the deck to get off, you know, that explosive turn to kill people. The reality is you're only going to be able to kill one person at a time. So it's good. It's just not incredible. And then we have the runes. For whatever reason, I couldn't find the green one. I'm sure it's sitting in a like specific box of cards I took out of my Urza Saga box and put in like an enchantment pile of enchantments I might play in EDH decks. Anyway, so these, again, they're narrow, and if I was going the creatureless or like the less creature heavy route without Living Death and stuff in the deck, then I'd be running them in here for a pure control deck. So, you know, again, all I've really shown with this pile is that the deck is pretty versatile. You've got two really viable strategies, you know, control heavy or just, you know, reanimate get all the creatures into the grave and dig for your Living Deaths and then cast that. I think they're both viable strategies. I think they're both fun and rewarding strategies, and require, you know, a decent amount of interaction with an opponent. So I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't really know which direction the deck is going to go until after I played it a little bit. So I'll probably end up doing a follow-up video eventually, and just saying, you know, which direction I want to go with it and why, and then showing, you know, obviously the cuts that I make to it. Hope you enjoyed this deck. I will say Trial of Alara is not necessarily set in stone. It was just one of the 5-color commanders I had sitting around that I kind of wanted to use in this deck. I think it's a solid control one. So, yeah, I'll let you guys know in the future how this goes.